I had to work even harder to be able to achieve that. And what got me to become one of the best in my era was I set a new standard in conditioning. And that was my way of paving my way to become one of the best.
Okay, welcome back to the Fantom Podcast. And today I'm with a very, very special guest. It's Arnold Classic Week in Birmingham. We have the one and only original Dragon Slayer, Mr. Richard Gaspari.
Yes, great to be here.
This is an absolute honor. You come to our gym.
And the first Arnold Classic winner.
The first, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute, yes. So Rich is here for the Arnold Classic. He's relaunching his supplement brand, Gaspari UK.
Yes.
So started last year, I believe.
We just actually started at the end of the year last year in November.
Okay.
So we were really big here in the UK.
I remember, yeah.
Our distributor left. So we were still selling, we still sell here, but wasn't being pushed. So now we're getting back in the gyms and stores and online.
I remember back in the day, like the Body Power Expos, your brand used to be everywhere. You used to have like all the big names. You had Flex, you had Branch.
Yes.
And things are sort of different now. The expos, you don't see so many big companies exhibiting, do you? It's all the dynamics have changed.
The whole industry changed a lot because what happened was social media took over.
Exactly.
So with social media, you have influencers that have never competed on stage and have millions of followers. They're here at the expo when you see us, Sam Sulik, that's, never competed, never did anything, but just post online and is becoming one of the most popular guys that people come to see.
What are your thoughts on someone like Sam Sulik, who's never competed, but they've got that such a big fan base? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on?
What are my thoughts?
Yeah. Your honest thoughts.
I mean, good for him. Kudos to him. Yeah. He pushed himself through social network. There's a guy that says he eats shit food and he can still stay big and muscular. I think if he competed, he'd be killed in the stage, but he's been able to make a living and a good living, using social media to grow on his YouTube channel with social media. So I give kudos to him. This is the new day and age. I'm an old school guy and I believe in, the big guys, that are competing, the big names, but some of the guys that have huge, they're doing great in bodybuilding, don't really are good at social media. You have to have a combination of both to really, really be a star. Yeah,
I found that out with some of the older school bodybuilders. They're sort of, a lot of the kids now, they're quite tech savvy, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you need to have a videographer, editor. You need to be, it's like a full-time job, social media.
Yes.
And back, obviously, when you were competing, there was no such thing. And training was a full-time job for you, training, eating, and you didn't have time for social media because there was no such thing. How do you think you would have coped now if you were competing with social media?
Well, the thing is every training session for the new bodybuilders, it's a video shoot, it's a photo shoot. So, I was known for my intensity in the gym and training super, super hard to failure. And I just can't see how I could have been able to train. Like when I'm in the gym, I don't want to be interfered. And I want to be focused and I have to worry about, my angle of how I'm filming and
having to do retakes and talk in between sets.
Yeah. I don't know if I had to train super hard. They said I wasn't genetically gifted, but I was still able to get 3 times second in the Olympia. One of the greatest bodybuilders, Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia. And I beat a lot of guys that were great, guys that here, UK, remember Brian Buchanan, the small waist, and Bob Harris, who was supposed to be one of the greatest bodybuilders. I beat guys like Lee Labrada, Barry DeMay. So I had to work even harder to be able to achieve that. And what got me to become one of the best in my era was I set a new standard in conditioning. And that was my way of paving my way to become one of the best. So I'm looking right now, it's kind of cool. You see in Hadi Shupin, who has set that standard because it started going away. He started seeing bodybuilders that were just bigger, but not that definition.
Fuller, yeah. I mean, I mean, we were there at the Arnold Classic a few weeks ago, and Hadi did remind me that old school 90s, 80s hardcore, the grainy, shredded glutes, shredded chest. He had it all there.
And, you know, it was kind of cool because when he would hit a pose, he would just pop.
Yeah.
And everything would come out, the striations, the pies. So he would do this pose where he just stand there and just flex his abs and just look phenomenal when he turned around. And it's funny because I've criticized him and he's got such a fan base.
Was it about his back? Was it?
Yeah.
I had a backlash.
So that went viral. I had a picture of Dorian's back and a picture of Hadi's back. And you could see how much smoother his back was to Dorian. I don't know if that's the reason now he's so much harder, but you cannot say that when he won the Arnold Classic this year.
You probably did him a favor, didn't you?
Yeah, because I got beat up by a lot of Iranians that said, you know, he's the best. You're not saying, but, you know, I looked at someone from 1992, 93, Dorian, and compared him, and you saw Dorian had a better back. But maybe it did get him to get better because the conditioning that Hadi was in this show, I would say it'd be old school back from, you know, with Ronnie Coleman looked at his best or Dorian looked at his best. That was the conditioning. And I hope that sets a new standard back into the sport that people have to be conditioned, not just big.
Do you think the current Hadi Chopin version would have beat the current Mr. Olympia Derek with Lunsford? It was close.
It was very close. And honestly, I thought Hadi was better.
At the Olympia.
Yeah, at the Olympia, even at the Olympia. I had Hadi beating Derek. I think Derek from the back looks phenomenal. His back is...
But it's only two poses that he beats Hadi on.
So from the front, his chest still was... It's not that he's not lean and he's not ripped. He doesn't have that maturity in the muscle that Hadi has from the front. So for me, I would have given it a nod to Hadi.
Yeah.
But I think the Hadi of the Arnold Classic would have beaten Derek.
Especially when you're reigning Mr. Olympia. Before... If you're running and you were slightly off, they would give you the nod. You would keep the title. It was super close. I mean, I was there, but I don't think just two poses from the back would justify winning. But I did speak to one of the judges after, and they sort of gave me their version. But subjective sports, isn't it?
I think it's a very subjective sport. I'm not going to take anything away from Derek. He's got like great structure, great shape, back's phenomenal. I know one thing, that he's definitely probably making himself much better for this Olympia because, you know, you have a show where Hadi wants his vengeance of coming back and winning this show and showing that he can be even better than he was, you know, from the Olympia.
It's going to be a good thing. I mean, they both have the same coach. Both got Rambot, so that's going to be. So what do you think about Samson then? What do you think he needs to do to get that?
I think Samson. First of all, I'm a big fan of Samson's. I think he's got phenomenal shape. He reminds me a little bit about Lee Haney.
Yeah.
Lee Haney was wider than him. He's got a little bit of a structure that he's not as wide, but just the way his body flows, he's just got a really pretty physique. The biggest problem he has is Samson has not been able to hit, you know, getting in that condition. He's like 90%. He's got to get better to go against guys like Derek and to go against like Hadi. If he doesn't get himself harder, and maybe that's the reason he got rid of Milos, you know, training him. So
do you think that's down to like putting so much muscle on, so much weight on in such a short time? The muscle hasn't time to mature. So, you know, it takes years and years to get that maturity. And because he's put on probably 30, 40 pounds within 2 years, that muscle hasn't set yet. Do you think that's part of the reason why?
I think that could be one of the reasons. I still think he's just a little bit soft especially the back. Yeah. From the front, you think he looks great.
Yeah, the legs.
He's got good, his legs. He's got great density. But when you look at him from the back, it's just like a totally different body from the back.
Especially when compared to Hadi.
And that's what I'm saying, the way he looked at Hadi. And listen, I'm a Samson fan. I think he's got a great physique. I think he will be Mr. Olympia. If he hits it, he will be Mr. Olympia.
Without doubt. Yeah, so what did you think of the overall Arnold weekend?
I thought it was much better this week. This one, or
the one in Columbus,
the U.S. Well, I thought it's starting to grow again. Yeah. It's still not the same as pre-COVID. You know, pre-COVID, you know, it was just like when you would go down that escalator, you would see a sea of people. Yeah. You couldn't even see one spot of ground because there was just so many people.
When do you think it was the peak of the expos? I mean, I've been going since 98, 96. So I've been going for the last...
I think it was like 2015, 2016. as soon as social media came about, and I'm also an advocate, when you can go online and do paid ads on Google or Instagram or TikTok, and what happens is you can see the ROAS, you can see how many people are clicking to buy your product, so you know exactly what you're getting at it, what's the conversion. It becomes a lot more analytical. When you do a show, you're just throwing money at a show, and you're not sure whether, I still think it's great to be at a show because it does help to be in the public eye. As an exhibitor. Yeah. But when you're trying to make money, the online sales has become so big and so precise to be able to, sell a brand. So what you're seeing is you're not seeing, like, you remember back in the day, I had these huge booths, athletes, throwing product and everything. And it's changed quite a bit. First of all, it's become very, very, very competitive. There's so many more brands. So what happens is the margins in the whole industry has shrunk. So people are making less money. So you can't spend as much money on just throwing product out. You're making less money.
Back in the day, I remember you used to get like these bags that you just fill them full of supplements. But nowadays, you just give your email address, your name. You're looking to get a free T-shirt nowadays.
It changed so much. I mean, I remember it was the war of the bags. Who had the biggest bag so they can fill it up, so that they walk around in some. Our bags used to be, like 4 feet. So we rolled in it.
Because I remember I used to go to Columbus with like literally an empty suitcase, just a pair of pants, come back, be jam-packed full of supplements.
Getting all this free stuff.
I remember when creatine first came out on the market in 96 and wasn't available in UK at the time, and I basically filled my whole suitcase full of creatine.
Yeah. So people would be able to go to a show and get enough product for an entire 6 months or a year of all the different brands. So then you end up not buying products from these people. So the brands started getting smart and started lessening, the samples that they were giving out. Now you see they give wet samples and let you taste it. And maybe they'll select you to give them like a packet. Here you go. But they're not just thrown away.
Well, obviously it's money as well. I mean, because the price of making supplements now, it's gone through the roof.
So expensive. Like I just said, is you make a sample, you're giving away close to $1. Exactly. So if you're giving away, I'd give it a show, sometimes 100,000 samples at a show. There's $100,000 you're just giving away.
You don't really see the return because people just they take samples. They just throw them in the bag.
That's the thing. Mm-hmm. So you do see the return when you do an advertisement in Google or you do an advertisement in Facebook or Instagram. You see the conversion that you put that ad in. And you see, it's 7 times conversion. For every $1 you make $7.
Okay.
For every $1 you make $5. So then you see that conversion. You're like, why am I spending money on a show? So I'm not against shows because I don't want to have people think that I'm against the whole industry. New brands should be at a show to be able to showcase their brand, to make a big deal. You could see now at this show, you're seeing Young LA, like they want to make a big stance because it just got into the UK. They're really like making people.
They're the head sponsor, aren't they, for the show?
Yeah. You're really noticing them. But, after a couple of years, I think they don't have to.
But your brand, you've been there since 1998?
I've been doing this since 1998.
Yeah, so your brand has been there for like 15, 16 years. So you just...
26.
26 years, sorry. 26 years.
A long time.
Yeah. Where's the last 26 years gone?
Yeah, they went by really quick.
But your supplements were sort of, I remember like back in the day at the old gym, everyone used to use Super Pump, obviously, because obviously Flex Lewis.
Yes.
Flex as one of your athletes, Brent Warren. Yeah, they were the good old days. Just sort of miss them days.
I miss them a lot. I mean, it's changed a lot, and it's changed drastically in the last couple of years. You see how, like, you go into the shows now, and they're much different. Mm-hmm. I was a little disappointed that I was seeing a lot of athletes, going back 4 or 5, 3, 4 years. Bodybuilders couldn't even hold a vacuum. They were not as lean or not as hard. I think the last bodybuilder that I saw really dense and hard was like a Phil Heath, and then after that it started dropping, with the last couple Olympias. But like I said, the Olympia that we're seeing now, I think the guys are getting back. It seems to be coming back. It seems to be. Another thing is that bodybuilders weren't taking much into their posing. They're just going into there and just hitting shots and not really putting a choreographed routine. You remember the routines?
That always amazes me when people like you train so hard, your diet, and like you just freestyle your routine.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started getting into competing, watching the VHS videos of all the Mr Olympias, copying Sean Ray's, examining Sean Ray's routine, your routine.
Yeah.
You get the music, and I would practice my routine religiously for like hours, months, hours, and you don't see that nowadays. You don't see.
No, I mean,
there's no creativity,
and that's another thing. I think posing really does harden your physique. I would pose for an hour a day, and going into a posing room, you do all your training, you do your cardio, and then you're in a posing room and you're hitting all the mandatory shots, and then doing your routine. You're seeing a huge difference in your body just getting denser and denser because you're flexing your muscles. And a lot of bodybuilders, the last couple of years, they weren't doing that. They weren't practicing their posing. They're shaking on stage.
It brings out the separation as well. It
brings it much, much more. It brings out density much more. And I think like what's happening is it's coming back.
Yeah, it's good because like Chris Cormier was here earlier in the week with Brian, and he was putting through rounds. Obviously, Chris Cormier is an old school bodybuilder like yourself, and he's still with that advocate. So he really prioritizes posing. So we got Brian to pose literally like the day he arrived from America, and we got to stand. It was like 10 o'clock in the gym, do like 20 minutes posing.
Yeah.
And he was posing that hard, he had steam coming off his shoulders.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you need to do to become that.
If you want to be the best, like I said, when I competed, I had to do everything to be better than competitors that may have had better genetic structures. So I had to, pose better. I had to get my conditioning better. I had to look confident on stage, and all these things do make a difference when you add them all up. You can have a bodybuilder that may be slightly not as structurally gifted as another bodybuilder, but if that other bodybuilder is like softer, you give it a good example. I think structurally, Samson is a better bodybuilder than Hadi.
Yeah.
But what happened is now you have a guy who's in condition. Not that he doesn't have a bad structure, Hadi, but he doesn't have a structure, like a pretty structure like Samson. You see how Samson will never beat a Hadi in that condition unless Samson figures out how to get in that same type of conditioning.
What do you think about the current, I wouldn't even say current, bodybuilders nowadays? Like everyone has to have a coach. I mean, back in the day, you never had a coach, did you?
That's another thing. It's amazing. It's funny. Like I did everything, like who knows your body better than yourself? And, learning about, listen, you end up learning so much more about, supplementation, the right foods to eat, the combinations. When I was dieting, you remember I talking about, this is back in the late 80s, talking about a gluten-free diet.
Yeah.
A lot of bodybuilders didn't know.
You were weighing your food, yeah.
Yeah, I was weighing my food. Yeah. I was looking at what foods had gluten, how they would smooth me out. I cut them out of my diet. I was very educated in getting myself in shape. A lot of the bodybuilders today they have no knowledge.
They're just lazy.
They just don't want to know.
Well, there's too much knowledge where they just don't know what's good, what's bad. They're just, I mean, I understand why people want to use a coach, because it's sort of probably, if it's a good coach, then you're probably going to save years. But part of the fun to me training was like learning about your own body. Yeah.
And I, there's a good use for coaches at the end, because it's really hard for a bodybuilder that's like dieting or on low carbs to sit there and figure out whether is he fat? Is he flat? Is he, is he full? Is he going to hold water? Is he, what's the carb loading? But there's a lot of coaches that screw up guys because they end up overloading them with too much carbs, or they're giving them insulin, or they're doing other things to change their body.
People overcomplicate things, especially the last few weeks when I've done it before, when I've looked fantastic week out, then leading up to the show, I start changing things. I start taking sodium out, putting distilled water. It was just, and then
you would change your body.
Look shit. Then 2 days later, when I eat normal food, I look great again.
Yeah, you look great. I've been doing I wasn't into coaching, and I've been doing it now lately. And I've been enjoying it because, I have all this knowledge, like how did I get myself ripped?
To coach competitors, or just?
I do compete. I do coach competitors. I do coach just regular people that want to get in shape. But it's been fun now coaching guys to get them into contest shape and get them into, so I have a bunch of guys that have competed and actually won their show and gotten into shredded shape, and figuring, what to do for their bodies, when to carb load, like I don't, like you said, you drop sodium, before a show, you add sodium back right before, the day of the show to change your body. But I've helped a lot of guys in competitions, no pros at all, but I'm helping some guys, and I'm getting guys to get in great shape because of the knowledge I had when I competed.
I mean, your first Olympia, 1985 in Belgium, you came third in your first Olympia.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
So was you always sort of lean before you started your prep, or was you sort of...
If you would have saw me, it's funny because when I was living in California, Lee Haney saw me and I was training like an animal, but I was heavy. I was holding a lot of weight. I was very bulky. So I was training with Lee Haney, and I was like 255, and Lee Haney was 255 at the time, and he's like 6 foot and I'm 5'8". Okay. But I go, hey, see, Lee, I'm 255 like you. He goes, yeah, but you're fat. He goes, you gotta diet down. So, I started losing that body fat. That was 1984. I was 20 years old.
So Lee Haney just won his first Mr. Olympia.
1984, he won his first Olympia. And Lee Haney was like, you need to stay leaner. And even in the off season, you had no reason to be so fat. I was a kid. I was 20 years old. Haney was like 25, 26. And I started listening to him and keeping myself in a leaner condition. But then when I won the Nationals in 1984 and won the Universe, back then, what happened was I over dieted. I ended up going into that show at 187 pounds and actually 185 pounds winning the Nationals and 187 pounds winning the Universe.
It was a light heavyweight.
It was a light heavyweight. Yeah. But then what happened, it was a year later, not even a year later, because I competed it was like October that I won the Universe. In May was the night of the champions.
Was you already a pro by then?
I was pro because I just got my pro card winning the Universe.
Okay.
But what happened was I started eating more and I just started filling up. The muscle was getting full of glycogen. I ended up going into my first pro show at 218 from 186, winning the Mr. Universe, 187, all the way to 215 pounds when I competed against Albert Beckles that people said I could have beaten him. And then that year in the Olympia, I came in like 218, coming in third place in my first Olympia.
Yeah, because Albert got second that year.
He got second. He beat me. He beat me in, like I said, the night of the champions. And then I was...
Albert must have been in his 60s by then.
He was, at that time, he was like, which is phenomenal because I'm 60 now. Yeah. And I think about a guy who was 56, 57 in top condition
on the Olympia stage.
In the Olympia stage. There's no one has ever done that. I mean, you look at someone like Dexter Jackson, who retired at 51, but still at 50. I think Albert retired at like 64, 65.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Just to think about how he looked, phenomenal, like muscle that was so dense and hard.
You've got to think about how your physique has changed over the last 20 years. How obviously when you look, it's horrible, isn't it?
I know. Yeah, I'm not happy the way my physique looks.
After this, likewise. But to see someone, 56, 57 competing in the Mr. Olympia, that's just...
And looking...
Yeah.
And at that time, I was 21, 22. I didn't really look at it like, oh my God, look at this guy. Now I think about it and say, I can't look like that. I could never look like that. So Albert was such a phenom at the time. Kudos to him because, you think about it, he won the Niagara Falls. I think he was like 62, 63, beating guys that were really, really good at that time. That was like the 90s, the mid 90s. There were some really great bodybuilders that he beat.
Well, that was the golden era.
I believe, listen, I think that, we set a standard in this sport because, it went into the mid 80s, into the late 80s. That was my era. But then when you go into the 90s, people say, when's the best bodybuilders? I say the most competitive bodybuilding was in the 90s with the Dorian era into the Ronnie Coleman era. When you look at the amount of quality bodybuilders from Flex Wheeler, Kevin LeBron, Chris Coleman, what's his name? He actually won the Arnold, Nasser El Somebody.
Yeah.
So you had such great bodybuilders at that time, and any one of those could have been Mr. Olympia, and you can look at those guys, but there was only one. There was only two at that time. There was Dorian and there was Ronnie Coleman winning the Olympia the whole 90s into 2000.
So your last show was the Night of the Champions 1996.
1996. Yeah. But what was happening was weird because I felt I was burning out. So I took a couple years off.
Because before that, you competed in 91 with the Olympia.
I went in the Olympia, top 10. Then I actually started competing again in 93 to make a comeback. I came in and I competed and I got top 5. At that time when I competed, I went into the Niagara Falls, and I went into Canada Pro and I got 5th place.
So won that then that year?
That year it was the Ronnie Coleman Flex Wheeler back and forth. Okay, yeah. I forgot which one won, but it was I think it was Flex Wheeler beat Ronnie Coleman. I lost to Milos Garchev.
Okay.
So I got 5th. 3rd, I can't remember who was 3rd at that show. I think it was like Nasser El Somebody. So I was going against, Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman, Nasser El Somebody. Then it was Milos. Then it was me. So I'm like looking at it and I'm saying, shit, I can't, these guys, it's like another level of bodybuilders. And I was already getting burnt out. And what happened was from all the training, which now I attributed, like I started seeing, my body change. I was getting nerve damage.
So body's parts not responding to...
Wasn't responding to the... And, I would train. And say, man, it's not working. And you can see certain bodybuilders, you see that happening too. It's time for them to get off stage. But it was happening, my neck, I was having problems with my neck. So the neck was herniated. So I was getting, nerve being blocked. So it was causing like my right side to not look right. I mean, you can see even other bodybuilders like Ronnie Coleman at the last part of his era. You could see his back changing. Yeah. Other guys
must be like very disheartening, because when you got that competitive mind in you and you want to get better at every show, then you're not seeing the results that you were 10 years.
Even though they're working as hard. I mean, I was in Italy and I was seeing Big Ramy, and he just he did his best to place. I think he placed was it in the Arnold Classic 3rd or 4th
from last year?
Yeah,
he got 5th last year.
5th,
yeah. And because he got criticized for the appearance of the Olympia 2020. He was just way off, wasn't he?
Way off.
Yeah,
and then he came in much better condition, but still something was off.
Yeah, compared to when he won the Olympia.
Yeah, with his physique. But he goes, I was in the best condition, which he was in condition, but something was happening to his muscle, and as you can see now, he's not competing anymore. No. I'm not sure he's going to come back.
I think it's a wise... I spoke to Dennis James last week, and I don't think he will compete again. You got to sort of know when to...
And he was saying, I still want to compete. And, people are saying, you need a break. And then he goes, well, I'm already 41, 42. And you're already too old to continue on.
I mean, it must be hard being Mr Olympia, then dropping down significantly to 5th place, then not winning an Arnold Classic.
Well, the same when I started placing lower, and I'm saying, shit, I don't know if I don't want to place lower. I was beating all these guys, and now I can't beat them. Your body eventually starts to not look the same, and you need to just get out of the sport. When I was competing, you got to remember, I was in my early 20s. I retired. I was Lee Haney retired at 32. I was already peaking my late 20s. You could see bodybuilding where a lot of guys in their 30s and 40s. And unfortunately, I think you start getting older and older, it beats up your body. I mean, Ronnie Coleman is 1 year younger than me. And you got to think about that. And he competed when he was in his 40s, really, at his best. And I mean, you can see now that, he can't walk really. He's got a lot of issues.
It's quite sad to see, really.
Yeah. And I have injuries. I'm not as strong as I used to be, but thank God, I'm still able to walk. I'm still able to, do a lot of things that Ronnie can't do, because I just think he went
too far,
but also older. If he was doing that in his 20s, I think he probably could have recovered. But because he was doing it in his late 30s into his 40s and training, but another thing is he trained at another level at heavier weights.
He used to train twice a day sometimes, didn't he?
Yeah, so
your body can only take that much. I mean, as phenomenal as Ronnie was, I don't think he was a smart trainer. He was very gung-ho.
He just went in and he just attacked the weights.
Yeah, but he was a genetic freak.
That's another thing. You got a guy who trains that hard, but also has the genetics. Then you have a lethal weapon, which he showed. No one is going to look like a Ronnie.
When you compete against Ronnie, he was
just coming up.
He was just coming up. So he wasn't really on the radar.
He wasn't. He was still he was on the radar, because what happened was it was where you had Flex Wheeler and you had Ronnie Coleman, but Flex Wheeler was really the favorite. And then it was the year before they had this Flex Wheeler Ronnie Coleman rivalry where Ronnie was winning it good. Yeah. And then that Olympia came where Dory retired.
That was 98 then, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was in 98. Yeah. So I remember this is 97, 96, 97. Mm-hmm. So Ronnie was coming up. But then in that Olympia, when they thought it was going to be, because he was, Wheeler. Yes, everyone thought it was going to be Flex Wheeler, and it ended up being Ronnie Cole.
Yeah, that was my first Mr. Olympia, because obviously the year before, Ronnie had placed ninth at the Olympia, ninth, and Flex was the favourite to win. Yes, the Flex or Kevin or NASA. So no one really saw Ronnie come on the radar.
Come at it, no.
So I remember in the prejudging, he came on, and I think he was in the first lineup, and when he turned to the back, it was game over.
Yeah, it was just a different.
Even Flex looked at his glutes and hamstrings, and he just shook his head.
He just was at another level, much bigger. Like I said, he changed the game, and you got to give the guy, he went from placing, like you said, 9th place and then winning the Olympia.
Well, he was last at his first Olympia in 92 in Helsinki.
Yeah, placed last.
Yeah. But he was supposed to be natural.
Yes. I think he came to my gym when he won the Team Universe. He was natural. He was much smaller than he was, but you saw the potential in him.
You see guys in my gym, which are natural, and I believe they're natural, and they got some awesome physiques.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw Kai Green when he was coming up. Kai Green, when he was natural, he was winning all the natural division shows. But he wasn't the Kai Green of what he became. But he still had the nice shape. Yeah. He still had the really posing that was nobody ever had posing like that. But then all of a sudden, this guy just got massive. So you knew when he switched over to him,
hyper responder.
Yeah.
What year do you think your best look was, Rich? What Olympia?
The biggest and the most impressive everyone told me was the 1987 Olympia that I was in. I was over 220. I was 225. And I thought that I looked, my biggest, my shoulder development was out. I wasn't as shredded the year before in 86. I won the Pro World. Yep. I came in a condition that no one's ever seen. When people saw me, my skin was had no skin. So I wanted to get bigger because I was trying to beat Lee Haney. Lee Haney was just such a great.
So you sort of played the size game.
Yeah, so he was 6 foot. Yeah. So I said, maybe if I get bigger, I can beat him. But the thing is, Lee Haney was structurally so genetically better, and I could say that today. At the time, I wanted to beat him. But then when I see pictures of Lee was my training partner. And I got to say, Lee Haney made me the bodybuilder I am today because I moved to California. I was a 20-year-old kid. He had me train with him as his partner. And from that point, he taught me how to train the body more.
Stimulate, not
annihilate. Yeah, stimulate. But I still annihilated my body. But I did train my body to make it more balanced. At the time, I had narrow shoulders. Yeah. My legs were too big. I was able to build my upper body, bring down my legs, bring better balance in my physique when I competed, as a pro at the same body weight that I was when I was an amateur. When I was an amateur, I was a heavyweight when I competed, but I was very short. I lost to guys like Bob Paris, Rory Littmeyer, these guys. Yeah. So those are the guys that I placed top 5 in the nationals. So I was told if I go into the light heavyweights that I can win the nationals. So Ed Connors, who brought in so many bodybuilders into California, he brought Jay Cutler, Lee Priest, Flex Lewis. He brought Sting, the wrestler. He brought so many bodybuilders. But he told me move to California. You can manage a gym in the Valley. And that's where I got to meet.
I actually visited the house last year where Connor's on the beach.
Yeah.
Really cool place.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Can you imagine? He gives you the keys to the house. He goes, here's your house. Go to the gym. I walked to Gold's Gym, Venice.
Yeah, it's literally around the corner.
And then walk to the beach. It was just phenomenal. That era was phenomenal because, at that time you had Gold's Gym, Venice, but you also had World's Gym in Santa Monica. Yeah. And you went up these stairs. And that's when Joe Gold was still alive. And it was it was just electric. There was no music in the gym, but then you see people just training, clanking weights. Arnold Schwarzenegger would walk in the gym. There would be Lou Ferrigno, Samir Bannout, Tom Platz. And it was such a phenomenal time, in my life to be able to be in that golden era, to experience that at such a young age and live in California.
That must have been the golden times.
It was such, I took it for granted at the time. Yeah. Now I think about it, a lot of guys don't understand how great it was to get to know Joe Weider. People don't know that Joe Weider, without Joe Weider, there wouldn't have been the sport. And, it was cool when, I moved to California and I wanted to, back in the day, you would read magazines and you'd want to be with Joe Weider because that's who, Arnold was with. And, you would see pictures and I said, I want to get to meet Joe Weider. So I moved to the Valley. So the Valley is where Woodland Hills, where his office was. But of course, I was a nobody then, but I was trying to get to meet.
What year was this?
This was 84. When I was 20. I just turned 20 years old living in California. But I go, I'm going to meet Joe Weider.
So how long had you trained before that?
Well, I started competing when I started training, I was 14 years old.
So you're 6 years in.
So I was competing already at 16. I was a really good bodybuilder as a teenager. I started winning shows at 18. I started winning shows. And then I actually was winning the division. I was winning light heavyweight. And then there was the heavyweight that competed that I beat that went into the men's shows, the Mr. New Jersey. Won that show, which I would have won also the men's division, but I didn't compete in the men's division until later on. But I won like the junior nationals when I was close to 19 years old. And I went to the nationals just before 20 that I came in 5th place as a heavyweight. And Ed Connors said, listen, if you come to live in California, you can manage a gym. And he said, if you go down in weight to a light heavyweight, you'll turn pro. And that's when I was training at the Gold's Gym in Reseda, California. And that gym was Albert Beckles, Bertil Fox, Corey Eberson, Jeff Eberson. And I got to train with all these guys. And there was Fred Hatfield.
Dr. Squat.
Yeah. And I saw Dr. Squat at that time do 1,000-pound squat. The first time to see 1,000 pounds done on a squat.
Insane.
So it was, like I said, that was phenomenal. That gym was phenomenal. And it was right around the corner that all the photographers and the writers, actually Rick Wayne was also training in that gym. So I got to meet Rick Wayne. So when I got to finally, win the nationals in 84, before that, I won the nationals, won the Mr. Universe, but I was still Lee Haney's training partner. So I went along with Lee to the Mr. Olympia that was in New York at the time. And Lee stayed in because I'm from New Jersey.
First Olympia win.
And we were all worried about Sergio Liv at the time because Sergio Liv didn't come back. So it was really cool. And then we stayed a week before. He stayed in my house where my parents lived, so he could acclimate. And then we drove to New York. But then when Lee, showed how he looked, he was just such phenomenal.
Because he made such a difference when his back developed compared to the 83.
Yeah.
Got third, 83.
Yeah, he got third, but then he just got fuller.
Another level.
Yeah. So when he walked on stage and as I was his training partner, I saw how good this guy was. And I was backstage oiling him up. And my hand would get lost in his back. He was such a, phenomenal.
Because Samir was there to defend his title. And Samir got his 5th today.
Got like 5th. Yeah,
he was pissed.
He was so pissed. But Lee was just at another level. And then that was the Lee Haney era. And then I was like, I wanted to beat him so bad, but I had such respect for Lee Haney. But still, I always told him, I said, if you're off Lee, I'm going to beat you.
How did it feel like? I mean, so you're good friends and he repeatedly beat you 3 times. Did you hate him as a person, or how did it?
No, I never disrespected Lee Haney. I always thought he was a great bodybuilder. And I always said, he knew that I worked my hardest to be the best. And he said it made him a better bodybuilder because he knew that I was going to come in condition, because at that time I set a standard in the sport that no one had. It was the first bodybuilder with striated glutes. So it was where, when I posed, the muscles popped. So he was a little worried, concerned, like, I got to make sure that I'm at my best and I go against this guy. So it pushed him, and they called me Rich the Itch because he was pushing himself to be better. But I always said, Lee, just remember, I'm always going to be at my best in that show to go against you. So he was, like I said, genetically better.
I remember one of his interviews, he says, I'm this mountain and these little molehills.
That's what he would say. But it was, it's true that he was just so much bigger until, the 91 Olympia when he went against Dorian. But Dorian still could not touch him.
No, especially from the front.
When you saw the front, and another thing is like, even 92, and I think Lee Haney could have won.
I think so, because
he would have won
the chest.
Yeah, he had a fuller. So even in that condition, if he would have competed again in 93, no, 92. I'm sorry, 91. He could have had 9. That would have been a 9-time Mr. Olympia.
Yeah. Dorian was good. He made, but Lee Haney had him on the body,
genetic structure, waist. I'm not sure the year later when Dorian just got huge.
Then
it changed.
Yeah,
it was another level.
So after you finished competing, obviously you devoted like 10 years of your life to competing, obviously very tunnel vision focus, and there's no more competition. What did you do?
Well, of course, you saw that I started Gaspari Nutrition, but I took a break. I bought a gym. I had a gym in Jersey that I was, trying to grow. Gym, I give you credit. Gym businesses are really hard. It's one of the hardest businesses to run.
I mean, you do it because you love the gym. I find having my own gym it's a nightmare. It's especially training.
And that's what was really hard. I was going because I was still competing. I was going to other gyms to train because when you're in your own gym, someone's like, "Oh, the bathroom's broken. Hey, can you help me with this?" And you can't. It's your gym.
Exactly.
So I had the gym, and what happened was I started doing these. It was called Apex or nutrition analysis. I was putting people on diets with this computer program, and then I started selling supplements. So I started having all these clients to put them on diets, to training. And what was happening is I was seeing that, time to train someone, you only have a limited amount of time. I started selling supplements, but other brands to these clients. And I said, shoot, I'm making a lot of money selling supplements, more so than trying to train people. I was making, a lot more, and then people were coming in and buying stuff. So I said, what if I made my own brand? And that's what just gave me an idea, a light in my head, and I just started Gaspari Nutrition.
So that was at the time before you started. What brands were around?
Metrics was really big. EAS was really big. Yeah. Actually, Labrada started. Weider was still big, but at that time, Labrada started his brand. So I said, if Labrada can start a brand, maybe I can.
So there was obviously room for another brand.
But the thing is about Labrada, he had a head start because he was the metrics athlete.
Okay.
And he owned a piece of the business. And what I was told is that he was given a piece of the company, but the business started really growing. So they bought him out, gave him like $1 million.
So he had the money.
So he had the money to start Lean Body. So that's what did it. I started with nothing. I started with $70,000. And believe it or not, I just started selling door to door to the gyms locally. I started, it was really funny because at the time creatine became really big. So what I did is I bought creatine from China, brought it to the US. I had big barrels of it. So I said, I could be able to sell this and compete with the other guys. So I actually bottled it myself.
So you were sourcing it from China, getting it shipped over. And then
I got it bottles and the lids. And what I was doing,
yourself,
I was filling them up. But then what I was doing, because I started selling 1,000, 2,000, I said, I can't do this for myself. So I went into the neighborhood. I had this big table with plywood. And what I did is I had this big pile of, creatine. So I got these kids. I said, hey, you want to make some money? I brought them into my house, it's my parents' house. I said, we're going to make an assembly line. You're going to put the creatine, you're going to weigh it, you're going to screw it. The other guy's going to put the shrink wrap and the label. So I had this like assembly line going. So my dad comes into the house, I was in the basement. And he goes, what the hell is that big pile of powder over there? I thought it was like cocaine or something. So I started this thing and I was getting, because I go, Dad, I started an assembly line to get to sell all this creatine. And that's how I kind of started my brand.
So you called it Gaspari Nutrition from the start?
Yeah, Gaspari Nutrition.
Creatine was your first.
That and I started selling protein and vitamins. I went to Universal Supplements and they used to private label. So they made some of my stuff. But like I said, I saw creatine was really big. So I had to be competitive on the pricing. So when I was buying it from, say, Universal, it was still too expensive. When I bought it, when I buy the raw material, I did it myself. I can sell it. And that's what I started doing. So I started giving everybody creatine and it started making me cash.
Because creatine is one of the things where you can sort of instantly notice a difference.
Exactly.
I mean, so people get the pump, they feel stronger. Yeah. So what was your next product after that?
I just started evolving in learning what to sell. Like it's a funny thing.
Pre-workouts wasn't around back then.
I invented, it's funny, we talk about pre-workouts. The first pre-workout, maybe you remember because you're older, is Ultimate Orange. And Ultimate Orange is the very first pre-workout. But then after that, nobody really made a pre-workout.
I heard rumors back in the day, there's amphetamines in there.
It could have been amphetamine. Some guys were telling me there was another product. What was the name of it? I can't remember. They said they had Dianabol in it. But what happened was I was trying to think of a product to make. So what happened is this consultant came in and he goes, this product was going to be made by another company. Maybe you want to try this. It's got caffeine, creatine, branched chains, arginine, and we call it a pre-workout because it's going to give you it's going to stimulate you. Mm. So I said, shoot, maybe I should sell that. So I made that product. And when I made that, I didn't realize that was the first pre-workout ever sold. It was me and another company, BSN, NO Explode, which you probably remember.
Yeah, cool.
So I had the blue bottles. NO Explode was the red bottles. So there ended up becoming this competition because now I started selling Super Pump 250 more than any pre-workout. It became the number one.
That was the number one.
Well, it was NO Explode and Super Pump 250.
So this was about 2010, 2009?
2000.
Probably 2007. 2 years,
6 and 7. So I became one of the first pre-workouts with NO Explode. And little by little, then all the products started coming out with, remember the EMAA and the ones with this, they called them micro scoops. And I was saying that's garbage because you still have to have efficacious doses.
The Jack 3D stuff like that.
Jack 3D. Jack 3D took over and it took the sales. It was cheaper. Mm. People got a good buzz off of it. And then it became, difficult. But I mean, we grew the company. I ended up at one point with Gaspari that its height was in 75 countries. We were doing over $100 million in sales. So it was pretty impressive. We were the number one brand here in UK.
You were, yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty amazing that we came into this market. And another thing I was able to do, you remember my product, Myofusion.
Yeah.
So Myofusion, what I did with that is
that tasted so good, that did.
This is the thing. When I was making protein, I noticed protein tastes like dirty water. It's like sweet brown water, like diarrhea, but it's not really, it doesn't give you that mouthfeel like you're drinking something, or you had something like Metrex that tasted that the consistency of glue because it had like gums in it.
It's quite thick.
Metrex, because they use gums. So I said, it was funny. I was in the kitchen and I was making coffee and I was using, the cremora that you put in the coffee.
Okay.
It's a creamer.
Okay.
So I was looking at it and said, what if I put a creamer with protein so it had more of like a milky mouthfeel, not that gummy.
To give it that texture.
To give it a texture. And by doing that, I changed the game. That became the biggest protein in the market. Metrics at one point, I was selling over 250,000 cans a month of Myofusion. And they were shipping everywhere in the world. And people couldn't figure, of course, I have to be dumb and tell people this is what I do.
Oh, I see.
But it was a combination of, because of that mouthfeel, it's what made the product. It's not only taste, it had to be the texture. And that's what took that product off.
Especially if you're drinking protein 2-3 times a day, people, you got to enjoy the taste.
Got to enjoy it.
And got to go down well. No bloating, no majestic.
I mean, I have to say, like in my whole career, like I love bodybuilding because I was very competitive, but the competition I had in bodybuilding, I took it into business. So like when it was funny, there was a big battle between me and NO Explode. So BSN, they used to put up walls of red. So I used to go into a store or shop and say, you know what? I'm going to put in a wave of blue. Waves knock down walls. So I would buy out the red wall and put in blue. So these guys were working to put in all these, big walls of red, and I was putting waves of blue and all that because I was like, I'm going to be competing. I want to be the best, and it was, it was really fun at the time.
BSN still going now, or
they got bought out by Optum guys. Who's the guys?
Gambia.
Gambia bought them out.
Yeah. Oh. Good old days, eh?
Yeah, sure.
So now, take us to now then. So what are you doing with yourself now?
Well, Gaspari had its ups and its downs. We're still, I'm very competitive. We're bringing the brand back. We're growing again. We changed a lot of how we sell the brand through a direct-to-consumer model. We're still going into countries like right now, we're back in the UK. They're following where they're selling it online and try to still compete. It's hard to compete because what's happening, the sport evolved and supplementation evolved. So before, many guys, probably like yourself, would want to buy an American brand. Now there's domestic brands, UK brands that they're selling because they're cheaper. So it becomes harder to do that. But we're starting to grow back the brand in many countries. I'm really big in Asia. Japan is one of my big markets. South Korea is one of my big markets. Indonesia, I'm selling a lot of product. Brazil. So the brand is still, going, but I'm still enjoying what I do. I actually started another brand, and now we're going to relaunch it again. It's called Gaspari Ageless. And now that I'm older,
more of anti-aging.
It's an anti-aging brand. So I'm looking at all the supplements for anti-aging. So one of the products I have is an anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
As you age, you have a lot of inflammation. So I made a product for that. A natural testosterone product, a nootropic. As you get older, your head gets fuzzy. You get brain fog. So I made a product for that.
I need some now.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm going to get into more, products that are natural for anti-aging. So I think that's a big category that's growing today.
Where can people get in touch with your products? I mean, this is the new Gaspari labels.
Yeah. So if you want to get it in the UK, you got to go Gaspari Nutrition UK.
Okay.
You can.
I'll put all the links in the description.
You can go to the distributor has Gaspari Nutrition UK. You can go on the Instagram Gaspari UK. Of course, we're in the United States as well. But if you wanted to get it, in the UK, I would go there.
Okay. Well, Rich, we'll wrap that up. Thanks for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you all day, although you're probably jet lagged and you got the big day tomorrow at the expo. But I want to say thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. And hope you like this video. Thanks again to Rich. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.